Mr. President, there are 14 kids dead in an elementary school in Texas right now. What are we doing? What are we doing? Just days after a shooter walked into a grocery store to gun down African American patrons, we have another Sandy Hook on our hands. What are we doing? There have been more mass shootings than days in the year. Our kids are living in fear every single time they set foot in a classroom because they think they're going to be next. What are we doing? Why do you spend all this time running for the United States Senate? Why do you go through all the hassle of getting this job, of putting yourself in a position of authority, if your answer is that as this slaughter increases, as our kids run for their lives, we do nothing? What are we doing? Why are you here? If not to solve a problem as existential as this. This isn't inevitable. These kids weren't unlucky. This only happens in this country and nowhere else. Nowhere else do little kids go to school thinking that they might be shot that day. Nowhere else do parents have to talk to their kids, as I have had to do, about why they got locked into a bathroom and told to be quiet for 5 minutes just in case a bad man entered that building. Nowhere else does that happen except here in the United States of America, and it is a choice. It is our choice to let it continue.
Yeah, what are we doing? We and much of the civilized world is asking that same question. And what is going on? And why? Why won't lawmakers do something about this crisis? It is a crisis. It's a long-running crisis. As President Biden prepares today to sign a comprehensive police reform executive order, tragedy and outrage strikes as the nation is still reeling from the Buffalo Top supermarket massacre in which 13 people were shot, 10 killed, 10 African Americans killed by a white supremacist there. Now they are confronting the reality again of a mass shooting where an 18-year-old allegedly shot his grandmother and then walked into an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, and opened fire. The grim last count had 19 of our little ones dead. Elementary school kids, 19 of them dead, 20 in total, including a teacher, making it the deadliest shooting at an American elementary school since Sandy Hook in 2012. We discussed that and more this morning with Texas Congressman Ron Reynolds, the Defender Network's ReShonda Tate, Billingsley, and NMPA journalist James Wright. Good morning, Congressman. I'm going to go straight to you because what are we doing? That is the question at hand here. Congressman Reynolds, I'm going to throw it to you. What are we doing?
Well, good morning. It's good to be on your show, but unfortunately, under these circumstances, my heart is heavy. I'm a father of 3. I have 2 elementary school age students that actually me and ReShonda live in near the same community. So this could have been my kids. This could have been anyone's kids that happened in the school. What we're doing is not protecting our Americans. We're not protecting Texans. We're not protecting those who may be susceptible to gun violence. And unfortunately, we have a leadership that is failing to ensure that people that should not be able to get guns because of mental illness, through background checks, through red flag laws, that they don't have those same type of mechanisms in place. Unfortunately, in Texas, we make it more difficult to vote than it is to go purchase a gun. We live in a society where the National Rifle Association, who's scheduled to be in Houston this weekend, unfortunately, dictates to lawmakers the laws that they want to see, and they are more concerned about profits than they are protecting the American people. So that's where we are, unfortunately, in this country, where we continue to see mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting, and nothing is done but hopes and prayers. Now, I'm a Christian, but my faith teaches me that faith without works is dead. And the only thing that I continue to see consistently after these unfortunate incidents that we've almost become numb to because they're so frequent is that hopes and prayers. Well, hopes and prayers don't do justice to those victims, because the definition of insanity, as Einstein says, to keep doing the same things, expecting different results. We keep hoping and praying, but we don't do anything to put forth things in place to make it more difficult. No, and the argument always is, Stacey, is this: well, the bad guys are still going to get guns. You can't do anything to stop it. So what's the point? Well, if we had that same mentality, we wouldn't be passing laws to wear seatbelts, because unfortunately people can still die tragically in car accidents. But seatbelts can help save lives. Or a helmet, or with the vaccine, there are many people whose lives were saved because of COVID, that they got the vaccine and they saved lives. So we can't have that. Well,
yeah,
type of mentality.
Yeah, Congressman, it's funny because you drive to Texas or any town in America, just about, and the seatbelt laws are much more enforced than the gun laws. And with that, I want to go, especially in Texas, ReShonda. Look, the governor, Abbott, had the audacity to wonder aloud, how did this young guy, 18 years old, get this weapon? How could he say, how could he ask that question when he made these laws in Texas in particular, where you don't even need a permit to carry a weapon? You don't need any training to carry a weapon.
It's so much about this story that the fact that someone would slaughter innocent children in itself is just mind numbing. But 375 rounds of ammunition. Who needs 375 rounds of ammunition? To me, there's just so many ways that the system failed these children. And I am really interested in to see if Ted Cruz and Governor Abbott, if they're going to tailor their speeches, because they're going before the NRA this weekend. And I don't understand how you can stand in front of all of these people and proclaim that we need more guns. We need to give people the right. I'm hearing, if you watch some of the conservative news shows, they're talking about this could have been prevented had the staff been armed. So they're trying to put more guns into the school. That's Ken Paxton's, who is our attorney general. That's his solution. Put more guns in the school, arm the teachers. And I'm just at a loss for words on how we continue to fail our children.
Yeah, arm the teachers. The teachers have enough responsibility. Teachers are so underpaid, overworked, and now you want to make them police officers. That's just insane, James. This is the second deadliest shooting on a K-12 campus, according to Everytown for Gun Safety, which is a gun control advocacy group that tracks school shootings. It surpasses the shootings in Parkland, Florida in 2018, when 17 people were killed. The deadliest shooting, of course, at a K-12 was the 2012 in Newton, Connecticut, when 26 people were killed at Sandy Hook. James, you're a Texan at heart anyway. You live in D.C. now, but this latest, it has to just strike a chord as it has with everyone else. But what do you know, James, about what goes on there? It's particularly, this is not far from the San Antonio area. What's the scene there? Because one of the things I heard, and I've been trying to verify this, that the police were actually, this guy crashed his car outside of the school. The police was given chase. If they were given chase in hot pursuit, James, how was he able to then go into the school, go classroom to classroom, and kill our little kids?
I think one of the reasons why he was able to do it is because even though he was being chased by a law enforcement in Uvalde, they really didn't know what he was going to do, but he knew what he was going to do. And he ran into that school and killed all those kids and those people. And, you know, Stacey, this is just why our law enforcement officers must be on alert for these things. And I'm just shaking my head at Governor Abbott and Attorney General Paxton. How in the world did these guys? Anyway, you know, we're up here in DC, we're on alert and we're far away from Texas in terms of that. But that just shows you the national ramifications that this particular incident has set off, as well as what happened in Buffalo almost about a week and a half ago. And let me just say this about the National Rifle Association. My late father, was a member of the National Rifle Association in the 1970s, but they weren't nearly as political as they are now. Back then, the NRA would give seminars and workshops on gun training, how to manage your gun and that sort of thing. But they've just gotten ridiculous, particularly since the 80s in terms of this politics. So I hold the NRA responsible for a lot of this, and the gun manufacturers too. And that young man needs he's dead now, but just plain crazy.
Well, just to highlight before we move on, a couple of comments. Claudette Perry, the executive administrator of the NNPA, says, unfortunately, Congress members want certain individuals to, quote, have guns to do their dirty work. We all know what that is. I think she's got a point there. Sean Gilstrap says politics is nothing but a game of expediency. Dr. Nicole McDaniel says, apparently, we have both gun and major mental health issues to deal with here, shaking my head. And David Youngblood says we need to stop pretending we care about children. We don't. And that is real. Representative Reynolds, we talked already. You mentioned that Ted Cruz, the senator out of Texas, will be speaking. In fact, I believe he's the keynote speaker at the NRA's event this week. And the governor will also be there. What kind of message are they sending here?
You know, what it sends to me is, and I think the American people can see this in plain sight, is that they are really they have blood on their hands. I mean, they are responsible for helping to ensure the public health and safety. That is a legislator and that is a public servant's first priority, is public health and safety. And what are they doing? Just the opposite of that. They are really showing that they have no interest in doing anything that's going to hurt their A+ rating with the National Rifle Association. That means that even though an overwhelming majority of Americans, when you look at polls, believe that we should have common sense background checks, we should close back like gun show loopholes, that we should keep guns out of the dangerous, mentally ill, and those who have a propensity for crimes, whether they have felonies or what have you. But these same politicians, as ReShonda said, when they after a mass shooting, their whole response is, well, we should have just had more guns. We should have had teachers armed with guns. We should have had this or we should have had that. Never, ever looking at the fact that maybe we have a society where we make it too easily for people to get guns. So right now, if I don't want to have a background check, all I have to do is go to a gun show, and I can do through our private cell. And there is no requirement under the law that they perform a background check. So that means, Stacey, I could be the worst criminal ever, and I got cash money. I can go get a gun in America. That makes no sense at all. But if you go to a gun shop, then they have to perform a background check. So why do we have these loopholes? Why do we have it so that the people can slip through the cracks? That is unfortunate. And I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. Enough is enough. When are we going to step up and say we're going to protect American people, even if it means that guns will not be as prevalent? No one's trying to take away people's Second Amendment right. That no one's trying to do that I know in terms of legislators. All we're trying to do is to make some common sense gun reforms. And if we can't do it now, then I don't know when we can do it.
Well, James, and we seem to have some technical difficulties with ReShonda. Hopefully, we get her back. There she is. ReShonda, you with us now?
Yes, yes.
ReShonda, I just think about what the congressman is just saying. Congressman Reynolds, we always appreciate Congressman Reynolds' input about the NRA special interest. I just recall, back growing up and hearing that term used in political circles and thinking, okay, what exactly is special interest? And do they really have the power to direct legislation? And I remember seeing the movie Distinguished Gentleman with Eddie Murphy, and it really highlighted in both a serious and a comedic way of what these folks do, these special interests. And NRA, there's no bigger special interest than NRA. So with that being said, when people are casting their votes, shouldn't they look at who's backing a specific candidate?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things we got to do is we got to get people out. We had a dismal election yesterday, a runoff election, and I don't think that people understand the magnitude that decisions are made in those runoff elections, in those midterm elections, and we really got to hammer those home. And we have to look at people that are represented by people that don't have our best interest at heart, and hold them accountable at the ballot box. I just can't hammer that home enough in getting those people, getting us out to vote, and getting those people out of office. Those special interest groups, their money speaks so much louder. But you know what would speak the loudest is if we turned up at the polls and voted them out of office.
Well, again, in 2021, Governor Abbott signed a wide-ranging law that ended the requirement for Texans to obtain a license to carry handguns, allowing virtually anyone over the age of 21 to carry one. The landmark law made the state one of the largest to adopt a quote-unquote constitutional carry law that basically eliminates any restrictions on the ability to carry handguns. And the governor himself described the bill as the strongest Second Amendment legislation in Texas history. When you think about that, James, how does he, seeing 19 babies killed, how does he sleep?
I'm thinking about Bill Clements, who was a governor of Texas. He was elected in 1978. He served 4 years. Then he was defeated by Mark Wright, and then he got reelected in 1986. I'm thinking about John Tower. He was a Republican U.S. senator for a long time in Texas. And I would even go as far as to say both of those gentlemen are probably turning over in their graves when they're looking at folks like Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton. I mean, we're not talking about just Republicans, Stacey. We're talking about really extremists, right-wing extremists. And that is what Greg Abbott is, and that is what Ken Paxton is. And I don't know what has happened to the Texas Republican Party. They have gone absolutely bonkers. And it is critical that people in Texas do what ReShonda just said. They've got to turn out in large numbers, not just in the People's Republic of my hometown of Austin, but all over the state. And because Harris County can stay blue, Dallas County can be blue, Tarrant County can be blue, and Beja County, which is San Antonio, can remain blue. But people have got to turn out in order to get this right-wing Republicans out of office.
Well, Representative Reynolds' critics, including some law enforcement officers, said that the bill that the governor signed and championed was a dangerous retreat from gun control amid a recent surge in gun violence at that time, because the law also removed the requirement that handguns be kept in a belt or a shoulder harness, but they still had to be in a holster, so you could just openly carry. But when you have law enforcement telling lawmakers and the governor that this is dangerous, and yet you still go through with it. I mean, what's the mindset in Congress there in Texas?
Stacey, I'll tell you this. I was there when law enforcement testified that this was bad for Texas. This was not what would be best interest. Law enforcement, these are the experts that are on the ground that my conservative colleagues were saying when the law enforcement said we don't need this, when it came to the George Floyd bill, we want to keep this and we want to keep that. They said, oh, law enforcement said this and law enforcement said that, so we can't do this. Well, they did just the opposite when it came to the constitutional carry, open carry. They said, well, law enforcement be damned. We want our Second Amendment rights, and it's all about freedoms and liberty. That literally, that's what they were saying, freedoms and liberty. We don't want to be constrained, and we believe that people have the right to carry, and we don't want them to be bogged down by bureaucracy and having to get a permit. That is ridiculous. So that ended training, that ended any training on proficiency, meaning that you have to go through a range and learn how to actually use a gun, a lethal weapon, or safe storage. There is no requirements. Like you said, in Texas, all you got to do is be 21 and go get a gun. It is freaking ridiculous. So I think that what lawmakers are doing is saying that we're going to throw out law enforcement. We're going to throw out statistics, all the data that shows that this is going to lead to more casualties. And as long as the NRA is happy because they're selling more guns, then that's what we're going to continue to do. That is essentially what they're doing. And until people do, as ReShonda said, start voting their values and voting in record numbers and unelected people, then they're going to continue to do it because the NRA gives them millions and millions of dollars in campaign contributions. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that seems to rule the day.
Well, ReShonda, Texas has long been a bellwether of gun rights legislation, with residents being allowed to carry rifles in public without a permit and guns being allowed on college campuses. Let's talk about the Black community particularly, because we have to care about ourselves because obviously no one else does. And we have to talk about ourselves because obviously when they talk about us, it's to disparage us. But what's our solution? We're getting to the point. I'm hearing so much, and you hear people say, what do we do? Do we start arming ourselves? Do we start shooting back?
That's going to end badly for us. Let's be realistic. The minute we start trying to shoot back, the minute we start trying to arm ourselves, when we try to legally carry, ask Philando Castile. Oh, wait, you can't. The implicit bias that exists in America does not allow us the luxury to be gun-toting alive Texans. I just keep going back to one. We have to call out the people that are being our politicians who are putting the interests of those gun rights groups before our own. It is time for us to take the gloves off because this is not a movie where we can wait for the happy ending to come. We decide what happens with our voices and our votes. I don't have the latest numbers, but at one point, Ted Cruz got nearly $361,000 from gun rights groups. So whose interest do you think he's going to have? Whose interest do you think he's going to put first when it comes to deciding gun rights? The kids and the 19 slaughtered kids in Uvalde are those gun rights people that think we're trying to infringe on Second Amendment. I don't have a problem with the Second Amendment. I have a problem with an 18-year-old being able to buy 375 rounds of ammunition and whatever gun he wants, but he can't buy tequila at the bar.
Yeah, it's no laughing matter, but it's so ironic you put it that way. The Tia TV writes in that you cannot, James, I'm gonna throw this to you because the Tia TV writes that you cannot kill evil with a vote. Only God destroy evil.
Well, you're absolutely right from a biblical standpoint. I could go deeper with that and say that this world is not run by that the devil is very busy, and that is very obviously what's happening. But I think that we have to listen to what ReShonda and what Representative Reynolds are saying. We got to get more politically involved. And those of us outside of Texas, we need to get behind Texas candidates, maybe Beto O'Rourke, in terms of who can definitely make a difference in the state. We just got to do that.
And good morning, Dr. Chavis is joining us, the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publicists Association. Dr. Chavis, good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to dear Congressman, and good morning, ReShonda, and good morning, James. I think that, I think they've already laid out. Listen, gun violence is on the ballot. And if we don't vote, there will be more of this, not only in Texas, but in other parts of the United States. I just came from Buffalo to funeralize one of our beloved journalists, sisters, Catherine Massey, who was gunned down by white supremacists. Shot her in the head, 72 years old, crying out for her life. And I think that this violence, this gun violence, this white supremacist violence, this madness that's going on in America, the only way, there are two ways to stop it. And I think I agree with what ReShonda said, that we have to mobilize politically, not just at election time, but every day. And when we talk about people voting, we're not only talking about at the statewide level, we're talking about at the congressional level, we're talking about at the municipal level. All these positions are voted, and we have to do much better. Texas demographically should be a purple state, not a red state, and it could be a blue state. We have the numbers, but we don't have the votes. And that's what we all should be working on, not only in Texas, but in Georgia and Florida, all the so-called swing states, Pennsylvania, I'll put that in the column. We can make a big difference. 2022 is going to set the stage for 2024. If we drop the ball in 2022, it's too late to complain when 2024 happens, when the right wing takes over the Congress.
Well, we're going to continue to follow this still developing story, hoping that any other injured child or teacher is able to survive. Right now, the count, again, 19 children and one teacher have lost their lives. We also, as we move on, again, we're going to stay with that throughout the week and going forward as developments happen. But I want to bring up the NMPA Summer Conference, which kicks off June 22nd in New Orleans, because here's another thing. At the conference, which is the theme is amplifying our voices for freedom, justice, and equality and equity. That's the theme of the summer convention. It's the 195th anniversary of the Black President of America. But one of the important sessions there that everyone might want to consider is equity, undercount of the 2020 census. And we'll also discuss home ownership and wealth building. But listen, Representative Reynolds, while we have you, we understand the census count, it was a major undercount. Just how egregious was the undercount in the 2020 census? We see that it was, in some places, it was major.
Well, Stacey, it is. And this is very unfortunate because it was intentional. For example, in the state of Texas, our state government chose to not use state resources to do the count because they intentionally wanted to dilute the numbers that would show an increase in African Americans and Hispanics, because that would mean that they would likely get more apportionment when it came to redistricting for when you draw the lines in those communities. So they intentionally diluted that to make sure that there was an undercount. And I think that is unfortunate because we're losing out on those federal dollars, because the money follows the population. And so in most red states, there was an undercount because it was in urban cities like Houston, where you had a progressive African-American mayor. They did everything they could, but without those state resources, they lacked the ability to properly count many of the minorities that were in the shadows. So unfortunately, this is by design, and we need to do something to remedy it, because there are many people who are going to lose out on those resources because of the undercount, particularly in the minority communities.
Well, and also these undercounts also dictate with all the maps, right? And the redistricting.
Yes, that's right. That's why you had a map in Texas where 95% of the growth, and it was probably even higher than that, because that's what was on paper from the census that's done every 10 years. 95% of the growth in Texas was because of Black and brown communities. But yet and still, when it came to redistricting, there were no minority opportunity districts, and in fact, we know for a fact that it was probably above 95%, because many of those same African Americans and Hispanic, particularly the poor, there was a gross undercount, and that's unfortunate. But you saw the Trump administration started that. They intentionally tried to put in things to scare many of the immigrants from participating, and then ultimately many of those people were not counted. And so we have to do a better job. And I'm looking forward to being in New Orleans. I'm actually going to attend, and I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Oh, that's
all there.
awesome.
Yeah,
we're looking forward to seeing
brother,
you as
brother
well.
Boney gave me an invite, and I said, yeah, I'm looking forward to attending.
Great. And Dr. Chavis, just to put a punctuation mark on this, Arkansas saw a better than 5% undercount, Florida 3.5%, Illinois about 2%, Mississippi over 4%, Tennessee almost 5%, and Texas about a 2% at least undercount right now, and as they still go through it.
Absolutely. And I think Representative Reynolds is right. This was intentional. This is not unintentional. This is intentional, and now we see the consequences of this intentional systemic racism, systematic racism. All the federal agencies under the Trump administration triage or tried to suppress, not only suppress the vote, but suppress the census count. But I'm hoping that the Biden-Harris administration, I don't know constitutionally if we can have a recount, but I do think because the undercount was so systematic and intentional, there should be something to help modify or correct. If the Congress has been given incorrect numbers, then I think the Congress is obligated to have the government to correct those numbers.
Yeah. And well, the convention kicks off June 22nd in New Orleans, amplifying our voices for freedom, justice, equality, and equity. Again, is the theme. Go to www.nmpa-events.com, and you too can come and you can sit in on these sessions. We hope to see you June 22nd in New Orleans. Thanks for joining. Let it be known. We will see you tomorrow.